It's time for Legal Bites with Wigod and Falzon, and we go to our I almost said sports line. I guess we could talk sports, Larry, if you're up for it. But it's our newsmaker line, and it's time for Legal Bites. If you have a question that you would like to ask, we can certainly facilitate that for you right now just by calling 787-3397. We also have a page on our website. Just go into the programming tab, and if you'd like to submit a question for next month, you can do that there as well at WKHM.com. But, Larry, welcome back to the show. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, no problem, Mark. How's everything going over there?
Things are going well. It's busy. You know, we got basketball season. I guess that's why I'm hung up on sports. But, yeah, I mean, it's busy right now, which is fun.
Yeah, that is. Mm-hmm. Get through the day quicker.
Now, we were talking a little bit before we went on. Now, we got a couple questions here. One of them does have to deal with the slip and fall, but one of the things that we were talking about before we went on, is there something going through Lansing right now that has to deal with slip and fall cases? What's going on?
Yeah, so what we're hoping to see is that personal injury law is very much affected by legislators and how they look at, slip and fall and accident victims. So a more conservative person tends to poo-poo the whole thing and not want to give anybody relief. And if they're more open-minded, they look at the victim's point of view. So we've seen this roller coaster in the legislature over the last 20 years. And they got to a point where there were a couple of court cases that basically banned premises cases, slip and fall cases. Actually, there was a period of time, I'd say, in the last 10 years where they were almost zero cases. So you take a lot of the legislation that was put into effect to protect people, typically like a landlord or a store owner, they have to take reasonable measures to protect their clientele. If I walk into a store, I don't expect to be slipping all over a wet floor, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And those cases from the courts absolutely reversed 50 years of movement in that direction to protect innocent victims. And then the new Supreme Court that we have decided that it got too crazy, so they pulled back on, it was called the open and obvious law, and basically it meant if you could see it and it caused you to fall, you couldn't do anything about it because you could see it. So they pulled back on that, and now premises cases are opening up again, and we're seeing more and more situations where we can help a person if they did fall. And we're hoping that the new legislature in Lansing is going to put the kibosh on that open and obvious once and for all so that we don't even have to deal with it. Because right now, if it's open and obvious, if that's a defense, it's a jury question. We like to see that thing just totally off the board because it's a real mess.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm sure some of this, correct me if I'm wrong, sure some of this is coming from a belief that there's people out there trying to gain the system, and I'm sure there's some of that. I'm sure you've come across fraudulent this or fraudulent that in the past, but I have to imagine that's in the extreme minority, and most of what you see and most of what you litigate, actual people whose lives have been altered through accidents.
Correct, and I agree with you. There are people who try to game the system, but there are people who try to game the system in every walk of life.
Right.
So, you have to be reasonable, and you have to look at the facts, check the evidence, and, a real slip and fall case is going to result in some real injuries that can't be faked. So that's what I would ask the people to do. If you ever get on a jury on a premises or a slip and fall case, just don't be misled by a lot of the media propaganda and the insurance industry propaganda. Just take a look at the case, and you'll figure it out, being with common sense and just being a reasonable person.
Well, and this, I feel like, answers, and maybe you can expand on just a little bit, I feel like this answers one of the questions that we had come into us over the past month. Someone asked, are slip and fall cases still allowed in Michigan? I heard that the courts got rid of slip and fall cases years ago. So they are, yeah, they're still happening in the state.
They're still happening, and they're on the uptake. And we've gotten used to telling people, no, you can't do that in Michigan, but it's changed. And if you do have, the best thing to do is if you have a premises case, a slip and fall case, you hurt yourself in a store, the best thing to do is call an attorney and get some free advice, and they'll be happy to walk you through it. We would, other attorneys would, and that's the best thing to do because it's typically a free call. And you'll be on the straight and narrow after that. You won't have to worry about whether or not you made a mistake in not calling someone. So call a lawyer, find out what's going on, and make your move from there.
Is it approached differently if it's, say, for example, a slip and fall in a store compared to you're at a neighbor's house and their walkway is just, not the common area that's out in front of the house, the sidewalk that everybody uses, but the path that's going up to their front door. Maybe the concrete is not level. You got one segment that's higher than the other, and they trip and fall. Is it approached differently if it's on somebody's private property compared to in a store?
Well, the law is the same. Mm-hmm. The difference is that when you're injured at a commercial establishment, typically there are cameras. So the quicker you get to a lawyer, the quicker you're going to be able to have that attorney contact the store and say, preserve the evidence, preserve the videotape, because they're not under any legal obligation to preserve videotape of somebody falling. They can erase it the next minute. A lot of times they'll look at it, and if it's in their favor, they're going to keep it, right, until the end of time. But if it's in the favor of the victim, of the customer, that thing tends to disappear.
Right.
So you want to have a lawyer write the letter, preserve the evidence, and then if they don't, after they get the letter, then at the time, if you ever have to get in front of a jury, there's a special jury instruction that tells the jury, hey, these people destroyed evidence. You can presume that evidence was against them.
Is there something you can do with a private home? Because, I mean, how many homes have cameras now right there at their doorbell? Can you do the same thing there?
Exactly. Same thing. You tell the homeowner, through the lawyer, you don't want to self-help. I don't want two people to start, getting in each other's faces and telling them, preserve that videotape. You need to get a lawyer involved so that you don't get in any kind of hot water with the law about self-help, okay? So the attorney would do the same thing. He would contact the homeowner in a letter. He would tell them preserve the videotape or the ring digital footage, and same thing. If they don't do it, if you can prove that they erased it, then it goes against them in court.
Larry Falzon joining us. Wigod and Falzon. This is Legal Bites, and if you have a legal question, we're always happy to entertain those here. 787-3397, direct studio line, so we can take those live on the air. And you can also leave a question for Larry on our website, WKHM.com. We had one come in that says, I think I may have a lawsuit against a person I know, but I hesitate to do it because I do not want them hurt financially. Well, that sounds like really a difficult situation. Someone kind of putting themselves in between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, and that also is sometimes the attitude people have with strangers who cause an accident where a person gets hurt. People tend to be kind. I mean, the majority of people get along, try to be kind, don't want to cause anybody any kind of grief, especially they don't want the person that caused the accident to be hurt financially that they might lose their home or their business or something like that. So the fact of the matter is that, and this kind of all goes back to how attorneys in personal injury work. 99.9% of the attorneys work on a contingent fee basis. That means they don't charge their clients for the money up front. They front all the costs, the attorney does, and then if they win, they charge a third contingent fee. if they don't win, they walk away with nothing. So they're not interested in going after people who may have caused an accident but are not really able financially to pay any damages. And I think most attorneys would be upfront with their clients and tell them that. So personal injury attorneys rely a lot on the fact that most people have either car insurance or homeowners insurance, or the business has business insurance. And we tend to deal with insurance companies way more than we deal with the actual, John Q. public. So if you know somebody or you're worried that you're going to a lawyer and making a claim is going to hurt that person, I would say that it's probably not going to have. I mean, it might affect your relationship with the person, but it's not going to affect them financially, because if you have a slip and fall in someone's home, or if somebody hits you with their car and they don't have insurance, the chances that attorney is going to go after that person with no likelihood of recovery is extremely small. Most attorneys will tell their client, look, they got X amount of dollars in insurance. This is pretty much where you're going. Because if you try to go beyond that and force the person into bankruptcy, the bankruptcy court's going to eliminate any other money you get from them. So if I go to court and win $1 million against, Mark Daly, and he's got $100,000 of insurance, I'm going to get the $100,000 from the insurance company, and everything else over that I have to go against Mark Daly personally. And Mark Daly can go to a bankruptcy court and say, I don't have, $900,000. And the bankruptcy court's going to go through their process, and they're going to eliminate that $900,000 debt. Huh. So it's a very practical, situation with attorneys and clients. But if you don't ask, if a person gets hurt and has a question like this person asked, it's a great question, because people do hesitate in doing anything, but typically the perpetrator of that negligence or that injury doesn't get hurt personally.
Yeah. I appreciate you using me as an example, but I always,
Yeah, okay. I know you encourage.
No, one of the things hey, you can't get grapefruit out of a raisin, so. Anyway.
All right.
Well, with that said, if someone is at least they're kicking around the idea in their head, they're dealing with an injury from an accident to no fault of their own, what should they do? And what's the best way to get a hold of your office?
So you pick up the phone and you dial, 1-888-2-GET-PAID, or you go on the website. There's 3 different numbers on the website. It's WigodandFalzon.com. And ask a question. It's free. It's all free to talk to me on the phone, and we will get you a quick answer as to whether or not we think you have a viable case and what the effects of that case will be on your friends, family, or unknowns. And you can hang up the phone and walk away and do nothing, or you can go to another lawyer, but you'll get some free advice from Wigod and Falzon.
Very good. And, of course, free advice here every month with Legal Bites. And if you have a question, feel free to call in 787-3397 or leave the question anonymously on our website. Oh, Larry, before we run out of time, anything else that we should be touching upon here today?
No, I think we're all set. I would say this. If people have questions about other areas of law, I've got 45 years of experience, so I do know other areas that I don't particularly practice in, but I can give, if I can give you advice if I know the answer. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know and maybe point you in a different direction.
All right. Very good. So all things, get a hold of Wigod and Falzon, WigodandFalzon.com. Well, Larry, as always, we appreciate the time, and we're looking forward to next month's show already.
All right, Mark, you take care of yourself.
Talk to you soon.